Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Streakwave Webinars presents Ubiquiti Network. It's my pleasure to welcome you all today. My name is Richard Bernhardt. I'm the Director of Marketing for Streakwave Wireless. Streakwave is a worldwide distributor of broadband products, and we are pleased today to provide an overview of the new products and status of Ubiquiti Networks. We have two esteemed speakers with us today, both from Ubiquiti. One is Ben Moore. He's the Vice President of Business Development, and our presenter today is Hal Bledsoe, who's the Director of Business Development with Ubiquiti. Streakwave has been around for about 10 years and provides both licensed and unlicensed spectrum products within the wireless broadband product line. We are very pleased to be a value-added distributor in this industry and provide for some of the best brands in the industry. If you need product in this industry, please call on Streakwave or come to www.streakwave.com. I'd like to introduce Hal Bledsoe, who's going to be doing our presentation today. And as all of you may or may not know, we just had a large presentation by Ubiquiti in Santa Clara, California, just a few days back, which was their AirMax World Conference. And so you're getting the information about their new products and their directions straight up right after it's been presented. Hal, I'd like to turn it over to you.
Thanks, Richard. So I wanted to start by thanking everyone for coming to our webinar today. I know everyone's pretty busy, so it's really great that you're able to take time out to watch our presentation today. So basically, I'd like to get started. So the way this is going to kind of go is that we want to kind of showcase some of our new technologies and new products. And I'll go pretty quickly so that we can leave more time for Q&A at the end. So
Hal, let me interrupt you one second. Just let the audience know one thing I forgot to say at the top.
Sure.
Anyone who is in the audience who would like to ask questions during the presentation, there's a section on your screen that says questions. If you would just type in the questions, we'll be reiterating those questions to the speakers at the end during the Q&A, and we may do some during the session. But in order to not interfere with the discussion, we ask that you do type them in. Sorry to interrupt you, Hal, but I wanted to make sure we got that in there.
No worries, no worries. All right, so I hope everyone can see the screen now, so I'll get started. So I'd like to start by going kind of a quick overview of where Ubiquiti came from and kind of where we are today before we start talking about the new technologies. So in 2005, we started with just the radio design, and we released kind of the world's first high-powered mini PCI radio cards. And then in 2006, we moved more into hardware design, where we were actually making boards. And that was when the first version of our software came out that runs on these boards. Going into 2008, we kind of moved into more of the product design, where we have the Nano Station product and the Pico Station and the Loco and the Bullet. And this is when we renamed our software AirOS, really focused on outdoor broadband wireless. And that kind of led into a big breakthrough in 2009 with the release of our AirMax products, the M-Series products, and the AirMax protocol. And that was completely focused on an end-to-end system design. And that brings us to where we are today, where we have the AirMax TDMA protocol that's pretty widely deployed now, that sits on top of our mature AirOS software platform. And then to that, we've added some key technologies and features already, such as AirView, which is the spectrum analyzer software that runs on our M-Series product platform. And then Air Control is a management system that we released recently that allows our products to be managed in the thousands and to be able to do firmware updates and statistics gathering, and soon will be configuration and alerts, as well as AirLink, which is a Google Earth plug-in tool that allows you to model your links. And then all of this now runs on our radio stations and our which can be paired with our base station and antennas. And so between base station and client, we offer kind of the full system design. So that's where we are today, and kind of a general overview. So the real reason why we're here, though, is to talk about where we're going in the future. So I'd like to start with first an example of kind of a problem that a lot of networks have today, and that's if we take a look at an example here where we have 3 rocket sector base stations and one backhaul. So as long as the dish is in transmit mode and the sector is in transmit mode, then everything's okay. However, as soon as we introduce a receiver that's trying to receive at the same time as the transmits, that's when a problem happens. And so basically the sector that's trying to receive is overpowered by the ones that are transmitting, and this causes a collision to where that packet isn't able to make it. And this happens kind of all over the tower and nearby stations. So that left us with the problem of, how do we solve this issue? And of course, the solution to that is to synchronize the transmissions that are on the tower. So as you can see, I don't know how well the animations work, but you can see basically we try to make everything transmit at the same time and everything received at the same time. And we need a very precise reference timer to do this. So where do we get it? And the answer, of course, is with GPS. And so based on this analysis, we, after a pretty good amount of development, are able to introduce now to you the AirSync product. And the AirSync product will initially be released on the Rocket M2, M3, and M5. And, of course, in the U.S., it'll be M365. And those will be with a GPS receiver. And so here's a screenshot of what the new status page will look like on an M2 GPS. You're able to see now that we have the GPS signal reporting that's actually in the UI. And just because of time, I'm not really able to show the example video, but I do have the results from this. So here's a quick overview of a test that we did, one with AirSync off and one with AirSync on. And so with AirSync off, in our test setup where we don't have the transmitters synchronized, the overall download is about 65 megabits per second and very high ping times. Upload is less than 1 meg. And using VoIP traffic, we see that the pings are 80% plus of the pings are greater than 15 milliseconds. In the same test with AirSync on, we see that we get solid ping times, 116 megabits per second, so almost twice the throughput. And then on the upload, we went from less than 1, so almost unusable, to a 17 megabits per second upload, and that was the slower speeds because we use a fixed 30-60 airtime ratio. And then with voice traffic, we see that 100% of the pings were less than 10 milliseconds. And so this is, you can see from this test what huge impact on performance the AirSync product can have when you have co-located transmitters. So here's how this is going to work on the installation side. So we've added a third SMA connector on the Rocket, and that's where the GPS antenna will connect. And then on the LEDs, we've added the ability to see that there is a satellite signal, a satellite lock. And this, the actual antenna is an active antenna with an integrated LNA. So that's basically been done to ensure that we can get a reliable GPS signal lock, even when there's rain or clouds or whatever. And the antenna itself is pretty compact and has a strong magnet on it that connects to the mount or anything metallic, and it's pretty strong so that it can. If you're worried about it, you could use something like a tie wrap, but in general, the magnet's very strong, so it should work pretty much by itself. So that's the AirSync product, and then move to the next slide here. So as everyone knows, Ubiquiti has pretty much become the standard for outdoor wireless. So what I'd like to introduce next is our vision for indoor wireless. And this is with our UniFi product. And the idea behind the UniFi product is that we wanted to make it highly scalable and basically a carrier-grade indoor product. And the way we did this is that the UniFi APs themselves are managed and configured by our UniFi controller, which is virtual controller software that runs on a server. And this virtual controller software, you can see from this slide, it has the ability to upload a map, and then you can basically place those on the map and configure them. And they're able to handle, in this first version already, up to 4 different networks with 4 different security settings. And they also have some kind of key features, such as the ability to locate access points. So with the locate feature, you would click one on the map and then tell it to flash its LED, and that's the green glowing centerpiece. And then in addition to the configuration piece, we also have powerful statistics gathering and monitoring. So with one glance, you know the status of the whole network, how many people are connected, how many access points are online, if any of them are offline. And then so this is the idea of our highly scalable indoor Wi-Fi system. So on the installation option side, we've included a couple of different ways in the box for mounting these. We wanted to make it quick and easy and simple. So one of the versions is a wall mount, so a nice clean look with that. And then in addition to that, we've included the ability to do a ceiling mount as well. So this is really built to be against the flat surface and then to radiate outward from there in sort of a semicircle or semi-dome method. So the UniFi APs are going to come in a few different flavors. The first one is the standard UniFi AP, and that's 802.11 BGN, a 2x2 MIMO device that supports a 300 megabits per second data rate. It's 10100 Ethernet, 24-volt passive PoE, and we expect the range then based on this to be around 150 meters. And of course, the controller software is free. So the second version is a long-range UniFi access point, and that is essentially the same specs as the standard, except it's got a little bit more power and a little bit more receive gain. And so that's going to extend the range to 200 plus meters. And again, the controller software is included at no charge. Then the third UniFi access point is the professional version, and that's going to be a dual radio, dual band concurrent access point. So one of the radios is a 2.4 gigahertz BGN product, BGN radio, and the other one is a 802.11 AN radio. And this one now is going to feature a gigabit Ethernet port. It's going to offer 802.3 AF compliant PoE, so these can be used with 802.3 AF PoE switches. And the range on this one's also going to be 200 plus meters. And again, it includes the controller software. So on the packaging for the UniFi APs, this is going to come in a couple of different versions. So the first one will be just a single pack, and that's just going to be one UniFi access point. We'll also be offering a 3-pack. So this is really geared to be a highly scalable, a fast deployment type product. So moving on from UniFi, I'd like to change gears a little bit here and switch over to talking about a little bit about reliability. So Ubiquiti, in getting our returns back, we generally see about a 0.3% return rate based on our volume shipments. Now it's possible that the overall failure rate could be slightly higher just because our products are so cost effective. Sometimes they don't get returned, but it gave us the ability to do an analysis on these returns and just to see why units were coming back. And so from our analysis, you can see that 80% of the issues were related to one particular issue, and that's Ethernet ESD related failures. So obviously that leads us to want to know why this is happening, and beyond that, how to fix it. So if you take a look at a typical installation here, and this is a picture of a nanostation that's connected to a non-grounded power over Ethernet injector along with non-shielded Ethernet cables. And if you look at the sources of where ESD can come from, so we have, of course, the obvious case of ESD from outdoors, whether it's from a nearby lightning strike or some other source. We also have ESD strikes that come from AC mains. And since this is a non-grounded PoE injector, that's going to be definitely a source of ESD. And then last, we have a source of ESD from the LAN port itself. So we do include ESD protection on the device itself, but these protection circuits are not infinite event protection. So what happens is that over time, as the ESD events occur, the protection that's built into the device gets reduced with each event. So it's not really a matter of if the device will fail, but rather when it will fail. And so this was something that we realized that we really needed to address. So let's see. The first thing that we did was to start shipping our own grounded PoE injector. And so this is actually connected to earth ground on the AC cable side. So immediately this was able to establish a drain to earth ground for both the ESD from the AC main as well as from the LAN. So this gives us a good solid protection for 2 out of our 3 items. But there still was the outdoor piece. Indoor side's okay, but what do we do with the unshielded cable? So basically, no shield, no drain. So we're still vulnerable to ESD events on the outdoor segment. So in order to fix this, we have basically did our research, and we'll be introducing our ToughCable product. And the ToughCable product features a couple of key items here, such as the shield, the drain wire on the cable, and then in addition to that, we have our drain wire hook to make it easy to connect the drain wire to the connector, and then of course the connector is shielded itself so that we can create an end-to-end ground. And so when you put it together, everything's then connected. The drain wire is connected to the shielded connector. The shield is connected to the shielded connector, and then the shielded connector is connected to the shielded RJ45 on the PoE injector, which is connected to earth ground. And so with ToughCable, we're able to eliminate ESD-related Ethernet failures. The cable itself is built spec from every piece to withstand harsh environments. We also used very tight quality standards in order to improve Ethernet link state speeds and performance. So we use very pure conductors and top quality materials for the cable itself. And it's also important that we use a top quality connector as well, so that we ensure that we get great contact. And then, of course, we use this same materials also increases the power handling performance, so that we can handle extended cable run lengths. So by introducing ToughCable now, not only is the indoor side okay, but with the ToughCable, now the outdoor side is also okay. So the shield itself is going to protect in most cases, but as a backup, the drain wire is there kind of as a second line of defense. And so on ESD events, that the ToughCable will redirect that surge down through the PoE injector to earth ground. And so this has shown in our testing to 100% eliminate ESD-related failures of the device. So let's take an example here of a test that we did in the lab that basically consists of this system: 50 meters of cable, nanostation, and our grounded PoE injector. So in the lab, we used a ESD gun that basically you can see generates a spark there. And we basically zapped up and down the cable. Now, without ToughCable, the device would fail. However, using ToughCable, we were able to apply up to 35 kilovolts of voltage, and we did this over 100 times. And we were unable to break the device with this ESD gun. So basically, what this was showing is that our theories were correct, that this really can stop that 80% of our failures. Now, ToughCable itself is going to be available in two different versions. There's a level 1 ToughCable, and kind of the key features of it are it's a 26 gauge drain wire, 0.35 micrometer foil shield, 24 gauge copper conductor pairs, and a PVC outdoor rated jacket. Then we'll also have a level 2 ToughCable, and that one's going to be Cat 6. Sorry, the level 1 ToughCable was a Cat 5e cable. Level 2 ToughCable is going to be a Cat 6 cable, 24 gauge drain wire, 22 gauge copper conductor pairs, a PE outdoor rated jacket, signal integrity pair divider, and a secondary shield sheath. So it's kind of double shielded with a drain wire. And so that's going to be our two ToughCable offerings, and those will be in boxes of 1,000 feet. And then, of course, there's the associated ToughCable connector that goes along with that. So now I'd like to move on to the various antenna offerings, kind of go over what we have today and then what's coming. So in our 2x2 MIMO antennas today, and we have coverage in the 900 megahertz, the 2.4, the 3 gigahertz, and the 5 gigahertz bands. And those come in different flavors. One is a dish version. We have sector versions, and now we'll be adding to that Omni version. So, kind of the world's first 2x2 Omni MIMO antennas. So let's start with the dishes, which are available in 2.4, 3 gigahertz, and 5 gigahertz. So for 2.3 to 2.7, we have a 61 centimeter diameter dish with 24 dBi gain, and that's a new product that'll be shipping towards the end of this month, beginning of January. Then for 3.3 to 3.8, we have a 26 dBi dish. It's the same size with a 7-degree beam width. And then for 5 gigahertz, we have two different dish sizes. One is a 61 centimeter 30 dBi gain dish, and the other one is a 91 centimeter 34 dBi dish. And as you can see from the slide, the beam widths are 5 and 3 degrees respectively. Then on the sector front, we cover 900, 2.4, 3 gigahertz, and 5 gigahertz. So on 900 megahertz, we have a 13 dBi 120 degree sector. Two different choices for 2.4 gigahertz. That's going to be either a 90 degree or 120 degree sector. For 3 gigahertz or 3.5, we have a 120 degree sector choice. And then for 5 gigahertz, we have two different sizes. So we have a 20 dBi gain, 90 degree, a 19 dBi gain, 120 degree. And then in addition to that, we have some smaller ones that are 17 dBi, 120 degree, and 16 dBi, 90 degree. All right, so in the Omnis now, we'll be adding these dual-pole Omnis to our offering, and those are going to be initially available in 2.4 gigahertz and 5 gigahertz. So the 2.4 gigahertz, we have a 10 dBi dual-pole Omni, which has a elevation beam width of around 16 degrees, and we have another one which is 13 dBi that's a bit bigger. And that's going to be a 7-degree elevation beam width. Then for 5 gigahertz, we have the same gain choices. One is a 10 dBi and one is a 13 dBi. And so with all of these antenna choices, the mounting is basically the same. So this really makes things easier. You know, a lot of you are paying sort of per attachment onto a tower. So we really wanted to make it to where the radio would snap directly to the antenna. So for the dish mount, you can see from these pictures that we have a snap-in mount for the dish, for the sector, and as well for the Omni. So that's our base station antenna lineup. And the last thing I want to go through today before we do questions is to kind of talk a little bit about the progress of AirOS, which is our base OS. So I just want to make sure that everyone understands it's very important to stay up to date with the software. So with Air Control, we've tried to make this extremely easy by making it possible to do mass firmware updates where you can schedule a pilot, and once the pilot is successful, then you can do larger groups of updates. But we add a lot of features and a lot of fixes on each major version. So in 5.1, you can see that we made a lot of fixes with AirMax stability, with Ethernet stability, and then we added some new features to support longer distances for long-range point-to-point, as well as the hardware watchdog. In 5.2, we made some even more fixes. So on the power control, as well as stability for 5 and 10 megahertz channels. We also, again, made big improvements in AirMax protocol performance. In this version, we also introduced the AirView spectrum analyzer and the speed test tool. Now, in 5.3, which is the next major version coming, again, we've improved AirMax protocol performance quite a bit. In addition to that, we will be adding AirSync, which is the GPS synchronization for the Rocket GPS products. We'll also be adding AirSelect, which is the ability for the product to dynamically change frequency on a fixed channel plan, as well as initial support for VLAN tagging that will actually be in the UI. I know we've had a lot of requests for VLAN support, so this will be available. The other thing that we'll be adding in 5.3 is AirView recording. So what you'll be able to do is to tell, say, like a client device to actually scan and record so that you can connect back to the device later and pull down those results and be able to view them, send them to your friends, and this gives you the ability to kind of do offline analysis, because I know with a lot of times it was difficult to use AirView because the link is broken when this runs. So if you're on the other side of the wireless link, it was sort of impossible. But now with the recordings, it'll be possible to do that. So as of right now, 5.2.1 is the recommended firmware for deployments, and 5.3 is currently in beta stage. And if you want to try the beta, those are posted in our forum. And you know, we're getting pretty close actually to a release candidate for 5.3. So I think we're on beta 5 now. So you know, feel free to pull that down off the forum and give it a test. And you know, the more hands and more situations that we can get 5.3 into, of course, the better it'll be for the actual release. And then coming in 6.0, we have some new products that maybe we'll cover on the next webinar, such as AirBeam. We'll also be supporting advanced VLAN and IPv6. And so that's basically the end of the presentation. So I'd like to open it up to questions on what we've gone over today, which the AirSync, the UniFi, ToughCable, and then the general software.
Well, thank you very much, Hal. It's been a very good presentation, and I can tell by the audience response that there's a lot of interest in these products because we have many, many questions. So let me get right to them. A lot of people were asking whether or not in the GPS products, whether or not they're backwards compatible and whether or not you can use them with existing Ubiquiti hardware. Why don't you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. So the only thing that will need to be swapped out to support the sync product will be the access point. So you'll need to replace the existing Rocket with the Rocket GPS. The existing AirMax clients will work with the Rocket GPS.
And there's no conflicts of any sort by using the two together, is there?
No. It was actually AirSync was meant as an extension to AirMax. So you know, it was built from the ground up to support the AirMax clients that are already out there.
Going to UniFi for a moment, does the UniFi AP need to be used in constant communication with the UniFi controller for basic operation? And I think that question and a variation on that question is something that came up at the AirMax conference, was whether or not you have to keep the controller on all the time or whether they could maintain a separate existence.
So for the configuration, obviously you need to have it running to do the configuration, but then once they're configured, they will run. The only thing, if you want to gather statistics and those sorts of things, obviously you need to have the software running.
And with UniFi, is this planned just simply for indoor installation, or are you planning in the future for an outdoor installation as well?
So this first version is indoor only. The the hardware itself is not waterproof. We are looking at whether or not we can, whether it makes sense to extend this to the outdoor. So I mean, we generally do what our customers want. So please go to the forum and tell us what you want. If there's a lot of need for an outdoor deployment, then of course that'll move up in our list of things to do.
And I guess as a follow-on to that, they wanted to know a little bit about whether or not the next versions would have more features and whether or not how this works with mesh. I know there's some component of the mesh here. Why don't you talk a little bit about how the UniFi units communicate with one another?
Sure. So this first version, there is no mesh functionality. So every UniFi AP needs to be hardwired, but we are working already on at least a one-hop mesh option.
And the controller itself, you can control many different UniFi stations from one controller, isn't that right?
Correct. Yeah, that's the general idea. In fact, the devices themselves, they don't have like a web UI or a CLI. They're meant to be controlled by the controller in a mass sort of way.
And one of the good things about that is that once you turn on the units, the controller finds them almost immediately.
Yep. Auto discovers the units, and then you can quickly provision them in that the controller software.
One of our listeners asks about the penetration through walls with UniFi. How does it, since it's an indoor unit, how well does it work both through walls and I guess through floors?
It's an indoor unit. It's really going to depend on the construction. I mean, it's not going to defy the laws of physics, but they are 2x2 MIMO products, and so that generally speaking, you can get a good bit better range out of 2x2 MIMO products. So that's, and then of course the long range version with a higher power and the LNA are going to penetrate and receive back a bit further than the standard one.
And the cost and availability on UniFi. I know the cost, we will provide the cost through Streakwave. If any of you, a lot of you have asked questions about cost and specific questions about where to get these products. And Streakwave is a major distributor of Ubiquiti, and so if you'd like to look, we will have the products as they become available along with the pricing, either online or you can call into one of our sales representatives and get your pricing from them.
Yep.
But if you might want to talk about the availability a little bit.
Yeah, sure. So the first two versions, the standard and the long range, will be shipping the end of this month, and then the professional will be first quarter of next year. And for those who attended the show in San Jose, they actually have already received one of those.
Right, and the nice thing about them, I was at that presentation, is that it's small, easy to install, and it's one of these things that I think everyone who was there is going to enjoy testing out. Let's
Absolutely.
talk a little bit about the ToughCable.
Yep.
The users are intrigued by this, but they want to know a little bit more about things like whether or not it provides water protection for a damaged sheathing. So if the sheathing gets damaged, it's all fine and dandy to have the conductive parts to it, but what happens if it gets damaged? And is there any sort of gel or powder to prevent water wicking?
So as far as damage to the sheath, as long as the sheath is not severed, so it needs to have a continuous connection back down to ground. But otherwise, the individual conductors are also insulated. So I'm not really if that answers. I'm not sure that answers the question, but it should function with the damaged casing fine. It just needs the drain wire needs to be continuous all the way down to the ground connection as well as the shield. Some part of it needs to be at least connected. And then the individual conductors inside have their own sheaths as well, so they're sort of double or triple protected.
Yeah, and I don't know, Ben, if you're still on the line there, but I know Robert spoke about this, Robert Para, the CEO of Ubiquiti. When he was giving his presentation, he spoke about the fact that these cables do provide for both what happens when if it gets a little bit of damage so that it doesn't provide water in all the time. I don't know if we still have Ben there.
Yeah, no, I'm here.
So let's look a little bit further into the a couple of other suggestion about use and creating a lightning arrestor, and I wondered if I don't know if Ubiquiti has a lightning arrestor. Do you want to talk about that at all?
We don't have a lightning arrestor, but what we found is that barring a direct strike, this ToughCable and the connection to ground is really as much protection as you need to protect our units. Obviously, nothing is going to protect you from a direct strike.
And the availability of the ToughCables?
I believe those are shipping this month as well, right, Ben?
That's correct. That's correct. And Richard, just one other thing to point out there is, we're putting these cables out there. We're trying to put them out there very aggressively from a price point, just to make it so that it makes sense. I mean, we're trying to get it as close to just the standard cheap cable that's out on the market. So this will hopefully help the installers to be able to make that that next step.
Excellent. When you started talking about antennas, I think I had 5 questions here asking about if there were any plans for a 900 megahertz Omni, especially a MIMO Omni. Is that something that is on the forefront?
It's not right now. We've looked at it. So the first will be the 245 gig. I think probably the one that'll be requested most often from there will probably be probably 900 megahertz. The problem with 900 megahertz is you're talking about a very, very big antenna. So you're talking probably 7, 8, 9 feet, depending on the gain figure. So it's going to be that would be a very tough one to do, as well as the diameter of the Omni antenna is going to be quite large. So we'll look into it, but at this stage, there's nothing planned.
Yeah, that was one thing that was mentioned at AirMax. It's just the physics of it. It would require just something really, really large.
Yep.
I had a couple of questions about air control, and they wanted to know whether or not this can be used when the units that they're using are set up as bridges, and whether or not air control can go through a router.
So air control, it needs to be able to reach the device by IP address. So they could be configured as a bridge, but they need a management IP that's accessible. And then can they work through a router? The answer is yes. It does use some SSH tunneling from the server. So you will need to at least have one device inside on the other side of the router accessible. So if it's through NAT, you may need to do some tunneling. At least for one. We are setting up now to allow one device that's behind NAT to act as a relay for the rest of the devices, so you don't need to set up port forwarding for every single device. But if it's normal routed without NAT, then as long as the IP is accessible, then it should work fine.
Turning back to one of the software products that you talked about, we just talked about air control, but they want to know, you mentioned that in the near future you're going to be considering AirView recordings. Can you talk a little bit about how that is going to work and how it'll be used?
Yeah, so for those of you who have used AirView, when the wireless card is actually scanning the frequency, it's not able to keep a link to the other device. So if it's a CPE and it's scanning, then it's not connected to the access point. In the past, this has made it a little bit difficult to remotely troubleshoot across a wireless link. And so we've added this recording capability so that you're able to record the scans, and then when the device reconnects, then you can get those recordings from the device and be able to analyze them kind of offline.
Okay, and another user here, another listener asks a little bit greater explanation of the AirBeam. Can you talk a little bit about that?
So the AirBeam will probably save for another webinar when we get a little bit closer to the release for it.
Okay. Going back to the GPS units, one of the users says there's a USB port on the non-GPS rocket units. Can that USB port be used for a GPS antenna, or do you have to replace the whole rocket?
So originally the plan was to use the USB port for the GPS input. Unfortunately, sometimes things don't play out exactly the way we had hoped, and we weren't able to use that port technically for the timing input. So because of that, that's why we will have the separate units that are the GPS units that have the radio inside.
Okay. Switching back to the UniFi, we have a lot of different kinds of questions here today. And they want to know whether or not the controller handles a user's roaming. So I guess they're asking whether or not the user can roam around between the various UniFi dishes.
So on the first version, the roaming will be handled as standard 802.abgn would handle it, which means the client will pick which one to connect to, and then when it's time to disconnect and move. Going forward, that's definitely something that we're looking into, is kind of an assisted handoff. But in this first version, it'll just be standard Wi-Fi handoffs.
Okay, and the UniFi is presently or will be shortly available, right? That's what we said?
Correct.
Okay, and will air control work across subnets? Let's jump into another subject.
Air control will work across subnets. Again, it needs to have access to the management IP for things like firmware updates and stuff like that.
And one of the things I wanted to note, both Hal and Ben have noted that I don't know how many of you have gone to Ubiquiti's website. It's ubnt.com. But if you go to ubnt.com, you can find their forum, and they've alluded a couple times that you can put suggestions there. But Ubiquiti is very excellent about responding to and noting the information that goes on the forum. The forum is open to anyone who wants to put comments in there. And give them suggestions as to directions to go or ask questions. Other thing that I can suggest to you is that the Streakwave sales representatives are trained in Ubiquiti. They can also answer questions and can also forward information to Ubiquiti on any issues that you might have or any questions or suggestions that you might have for Ubiquiti. So I just wanted to put that in there. If you had an opportunity to go to the website, if you haven't, rather, you should.
Yeah, I'll add to that too, Richard. Is that the actual developers that work on these products do monitor those forums as well. So if you have a technical question or a feature recommendation, just know that they're on there as well, and we'll reply to you as well.
Turning back to the ToughCable for a moment, they ask about the availability of an the use of it in a high interference environment indoor. I know that you have the availability of using it outdoor and indoor. Maybe you can talk about interference indoor.
Yeah, so it is a shielded cable, so that's going to help quite a bit with the interference. So it's not going to do anything more than a normal shielded cable would to block the interference. But with the foil thickness that we're using and stuff, it should do pretty well with that. And then, of course, grounding it is going to help as well.
Great. One thing that you didn't mention in this presentation, and we can talk about it a little bit. We don't have time to go into it in detail here, but you mentioned at the AirMax conference that Ubiquiti is talking about security cameras. And a couple of users here have asked whether or not they're going to be out there in the future. So maybe you can just say a few words about the cameras.
Sure. So we will be releasing our NVR camera software the first quarter of next year, and along with that, or after that, we will also be releasing the beginning of our IP camera line. And just note that the NVR software, the network video recording software, will support third-party cameras as well, like Axis and those types of cameras.
A couple of people have asked about air control, and I imagine it's with some of the other software as well, as to whether or not it requires Windows or it can work on Mac platforms. Talk a little bit about the software.
Yeah, so in general, most of our software can be used on Windows, Linux, or Mac. We use, for the most part, Java or Ajax, JavaScript kind of platform. So our goal, of course, is to make it available on as many platforms as possible and not be locked to anything like just Windows.
Next question, and this is sort of a compilation of questions, is that there are a number of frequencies that you're exploring, both in the U.S. and in the international spectrums for some of your radio products. Do you want to talk a little bit about where you're going in the expansion of different frequencies?
Sure. So already today, we do feature our frequency freedom technology, and that's already what allows us to hit like 900 megahertz and 3 gigahertz. And in fact, for licensed band and for international frequencies, we are able to support extended frequencies with our current technologies. So for instance, we can support 2.3 to 2.7 in the 2.4 products. Of course, that is only for use for licensed bands or for international use where these bands are allowed. And then we recently announced that we do have a 10 gigahertz product, PowerBridge M10, that'll be shipping soon. But again, this is for there's some places in the world where this is an unlicensed band, such as Eastern Europe and Australia. So, going forward, of course, we're always looking at new frequencies and new opportunities, and a lot of this really just depends on the local regulatory authorities.
Turning back to ToughCable, there's someone here who's interested in how beautiful it is. They want to know, is there a color selection available?
I believe it's only available in yeah. Maybe if we get enough requests for hot pink.
No, but yeah, right now it's going to be a darker shade. I know there's a lot of requests for gray, and we're looking into that.
And on the ends, the connector ends themselves, can you talk a little bit about the connector ends? I know you have very, very specially designed those connector ends. How waterproof are they, and how well do they? I know you have the place that the drain wire connects to them. You want to talk a little bit about how all that works?
Yeah. Ben, do you want to talk, or you want me to?
No, go ahead. Yeah.
Okay. So they're a shielded Ethernet connector. Obviously, they're not. It's the connector itself is not waterproof. I mean, they have exposed leads. So the other feature that we have on these, besides being shielded, is that there's the drain wire a crimp connector. So it's really quick and easy to stick the drain wire in there and crimp it and go. So there's no soldering of the drain wire onto the connector or anything like that. So we've really tried to make it quick and easy to install properly.
And these connect directly with the cable, and so one thing I want to stress is that they're going to be very affordable, which is a good option, and as with all Ubiquiti products. A lot of people responding back as we're talking here about the color. One person says that black is bad in the desert, and white is, how about white? I think this is something that if you'd like to make some comments on it, would be a good place to put into the forum, and they can consider different colors.
Definitely.
Absolutely.
Do you have any plans for entering the 700 megahertz band in the United States?
Yes, I mean, we're obviously continuing to watch the TV white space developments, and it's just the regulatory wheels move slowly. So if you look back at what happened with 365, from the time that 365 was approved to the time they actually accepted equipment applications was 1 or 2 years. So as soon as we're able to get into new spectrum, of course, then we'll be there.
4 or 5 of you have actually asked about the TV white space frequencies, and I will tell you that I know Ubiquiti, like many of our manufacturers, are watching that very, very closely. You won't see anyone really coming out with products of that till they finalize the specs and all of the regulatory side, but I'm sure Ubiquiti, you guys can comment on this, is watching it just as well as everyone else.
Yeah, I mean, technically we're already able to hit those frequencies, so that's not going to be the issue. It's just going to be the regulatory piece.
Right. Now, the thing that I want to go into a little bit here before we go off, we just have a couple more minutes. I get asked this every time we do a webinar, and a couple of you have asked it here. There's so much content that we've heard today. How do we get a copy of this? Is there any way to see the slides again? The answer is absolutely yes. We don't send out the slides per se, but all webinars that Streakwave Webinars do in the public forum are put onto the Streakwave YouTube channel and are linked to the landing page for the manufacturer on streakwave.com. So within a couple of days, assuming everything goes okay technically, we will render a copy of this onto youtube.streakwave.com, which is the YouTube channel, which you can find by going to streakwave.com and just linking to our YouTube channel, or by going to the Ubiquiti landing page on streakwave.com, and a copy of the presentation as well as the Q&A will be available there. A couple notes. We have had an unusually large, and I appreciate it, an unusually large number of questions. Some of the questions are a little longer, a little more technically in-depth than I think we can cover in the webinar. So if you haven't heard your question mentioned here, I apologize. We will try our best to take the questions and forward them to you guys, to Ben and to Hal, and hopefully we can get an answer back for you and or post them to the forum and let them be answered there. The best thing is that they have all of these questions will be available to the Ubiquiti folks so that they can try and answer them for you. We've appreciated the time that both Hal and Ben have taken today. We're coming up on the hour, and so I want to draw it to close. Hal or Ben, do you guys have any final comments that you'd like to make before we close down?
No, nothing on my side. Just appreciate everybody taking the time, and keep the comments coming and the feedback coming. We appreciate it.
Yeah, as with the AirMax conference, there were a tremendous number of questions about what's coming and what's happening, and Ubiquiti is always very good about that, about responding to that. And also on the technical questions and the application questions, you can always call Streakwave directly. Our sales representatives are more than happy to work with you on your projects and answer any questions that you might have about where things can be used and how they can be used. As with all Streakwave webinars, as I noted earlier, they'll be posted online. We invite you to attend regularly. There's always no cost for these webinars, and it's a great forum to learn a little bit more about the upcoming technologies. Somebody here asked about future AirMax conferences, and I'm going to go ahead and refer them to the UBNT website because they post the AirMax conferences and their dates there very clearly. Streakwave also attends those conferences and posts a copy of the ones that we're attending on our website. I'd again like to thank Hal Bledsoe and Ben Moore of Ubiquiti, and we invite you to attend further Streakwave TV, Streakwave webinars in the future. Again, have a wonderful day, and thank you all for participating.